Okay, so REITs versus multifamily syndication investing, right? REITs are real estate investment trusts, and they're liquid, and you can get in, you can get out. There's some real advantages of them. There's some disadvantages also. Also multifamily syndication. If you're interested in learning how that works and what are the differences, right? Aren't they kind of the same thing? The answer is no, they are very different. There's advantages to both. We're gonna jump into it. Go ahead and smash that like button. We're gonna get started, and we're gonna go through this. Okay, so as we get started, let me take a little disclaimer. I am not your financial advisor. I'm just simply giving my opinions as an educational consultant professional before making your own investment decisions. So first of all, what is a REIT? Now, some of you know what a REIT is, but I'm gonna get into some of the specific advantages of REITs and disadvantages as well. So REITs basically stands for a real estate investment trust. These are publicly traded companies that you can obviously get in and out of just on the stock market, on the stock exchange. Very, very large companies. They have a rule that you have to pay 90% or more of the profits out to investors. So that is one thing that's interesting about REITs. Some pros, you can see I've got a couple pros and a bunch of cons, but I'm gonna go through the pros in purple. But liquidity, right? They offer liquidity. So if you wanted to sell, you can just immediately sell. It's no big deal. There's a saying though, if you want to have a lot of liquidity, you should just go to a bar because you're going to find a lot more liquidity in a place like that. But these investments do offer liquidity. There's also scale. So if somebody has billions of dollars to invest, there are REITs that will happily take your money and they can accommodate all of it because they're buying the nicest, newest properties in the biggest markets. So there's a lot of ability to scale for them to scale. Now, some of the cons here, I'm going to step over here. Some of the cons are these are, again, Class A type of properties, brand new properties, typically, or, typically not that old, the last, 10, 15, 20 years. There's going to be really not much opportunity to really add value. So that's kind of down here about the idea of adding value to properties. Properties that are older or maybe in a syndication, you are able to find ways to add value. If a property is Class A, really there shouldn't really be much value to add, really much at all. So you own the market, so if the market goes up, these will go up. If the market goes down, they'll go down. That's just kind of par for the course, right? So when you own REITs, generally it's going to, for the most part, follow what the market does. And some would say that's an advantage. I would say it's a con. It's a negative because I wouldn't say it's a con, meaning it's like a con job or something, but it's definitely a negative because you want to do something that gives you something that distinguishes you from the market, whatever you invest in, I think. Fourth thing really is you can't identify an underperformer. If you have hundreds or even thousands of properties in one REIT, if there's underperformance, how do you know which ones, as an investor, are underperforming? And what do you do about it? I mean, there's so much in there, it's hard to really tell. So again, you have so much diversity that you really are the market, kind of coming back to this one, you own the market. And it really is operator dependent as well, right? It's dependent on who's operating that, on the group that's operating it, and kind of how that works. So again, some pros and cons, but that's really how REITs work. All right, so this is understanding multifamily syndication. How is it different than a REIT? Well, multifamily syndication, how it works really is basically it's two words, right? We've got multifamily, so it's talking about apartment buildings, anything more than 2 units. These are typically larger, 100 units or more. Sometimes they're more or less, but it can be very, very large. But you have a multifamily building, and then you have this thing called syndication. Now, syndication, what that means is you have this general partner and limited partner split. So what happens is we purchase a property in the name of a company. So let's say this property is called Sunrise Apartments, for example. We'll say this will be Sunrise Apartments LLC. We'll raise $5 million from investors, including ourselves. We'll put a total of $5 million. And then basically the profits will be split. There'll be a profit split. A common split is 70-30 or 80-20, meaning 70% of the profits go to the limited partners, again, the LPs, the limited partners, and then 30% go to the general partners, right? So we have this split based on alignment of interests and really who's actually doing the work, which is the general partners, and who's actually investing are the limited partners, right? So that's how it kind of works generally with multifamily syndication. Now, some pros of this compared to REITs is that you get generally higher returns. It's not uncommon to see returns pretty substantially higher than REITs, and there are some good reasons for that. One is that this has this value add type of component where you can do renovations on the property. These are typically properties that are a little bit older. Some of the units might need renovations, so you spend $10,000 per unit. You see some rent upside as you renovate those units. You can do some common area stuff. Maybe you can fix the pool area. You can add a dog park, whatever it is, and this increases rents, which really is how multifamily is really valued, is based on that. So some tax advantages, and then you get actual ownership. You don't just own, you're not one of millions of investors and kind of have these paper shares. You're actually a real owner of this apartment building, of this particular asset, which is really nice. So some real pros there. There are some cons of owning multifamily real estate through a syndication. One is that it's not liquid. It typically can be, 2, 3, 4, 5 years before money comes back, besides just cash flow or other things. So it is more of an illiquid investment. And then also, just like REITs, it is operator dependent. It depends on who's actually running the project, how it's actually working. So these are some things that are pros and cons really about multifamily investing. So the last question really is, which is better, multifamily syndication or REITs, right? There's advantages and disadvantages to both. So let's start with REITs. So REITs, some of the things about REITs is that they have too much money. They go into a market, they have billions of dollars, they have to buy the largest, newest properties in the biggest markets, right? So there's less upside there because they're buying in these big markets. They just have to put it in certain areas. A disadvantage is they're not able to do a value add type of return. So they get the rents that come in for the property, but there's really not a lot more additional upside versus some sort of value that you can add to the properties. They're typically newer properties in general that REITs are kind of full of. So you'll have lower returns. Some people feel it might be more stable. I would beg to differ, because being in bigger markets, those are typically places that are hit pretty hard with recessions when it comes to high-end housing. So a lot of particularly high-end apartments are usually hit very hard. High-end commercial stuff can be hit hard in a recession as well. So I would say that's something important to consider. However, if you do have need for liquidity, meaning you need to get your money back or you want to have it available right away, you can sell REITs, immediately. You can sell it multiple times during the day. So it's if you're looking at short term or something like that, but the challenge to that is, again, you really own the stock market. So whatever the stock market is doing, that's kind of how your REITs typically are doing. Multifamily syndication, some of the advantages are you get higher returns really because of this value add component. You get the returns that you get from just basically, general rents, but you also get this kind of second part, which is really the upside from doing those renovations and increasing the rents when new folks move in. So you get that value, so you typically get a higher return. There's some really unique tax advantages where you're able to defer a lot of the taxes or not pay taxes on what you're making, which is amazing. Also, the disadvantage of multifamily syndication is that you're not as liquid as you are in a REIT, right? REITs you can buy and sell whenever you want. This one you're typically in for 2 to 5 years, sometimes a little longer, but in general, it's more of a longer term type of investment. So if you're interested in learning about how to use your retirement account and really, get supercharge your retirement account, check out this video. It's how to 17x your retirement returns. You can check that out. It's very compelling. This quote I wanted to share with you today is from Albert Einstein, and he says, "The strongest force in the universe is compound interest," right? And this is a guy very smart guy, created some pretty amazing things. So the strongest force in the universe is compound interest. So I hope you get it working for you. You get on the other side of saying, hey, if I get higher returns for a longer period of time, you'll live in a place of financial freedom. But I wanted to hear in the comments from you, what are you invested in REITs? Are you invested in multifamily syndication? Would you invest in one? Would you not invest in the other? Please stick that in the comments. It'll really help our community when we have more engagement in the comments. So please stick that down below. I'd appreciate it. Wanted to say, if you are interested in hearing more about inflation, real estate, what's happening currently in the economy, make sure you subscribe, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video.